Oh, there goes my smile. I'm happy. Okay, so as the producer, director, stage manager of TMS Roundtable Global, uh, from Rose and I'm here in Israel, streaming live. Rose is in Australia, not with us tonight. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein, and I am here with an outstanding guest. Every week is an outstanding guest, but I am always very excited to meet special people who contact me. And I'm going to give you a little background for the listeners. Rob sent me an email and he said something like, I think you're going to want to know about this. I think you'd be interested. I've seen your shows. And then he proceeded to tell me that he had healed from, everything from pretty much A to Z, autoimmune, including ankylosing spondylitis, digestive issues. I mean, he was in a wheelchair, which I can imagine. And he said he was writing a book, and he sent me part of his book. Well, I clicked right away and sent it to Rose. And that was maybe about a month ago, Rob. Anyway.
Yeah, it was a while ago, maybe 5 weeks.
About a month ago. And I said, I want to speak to you. And we spoke. And then I invited him to a group therapy class that I have each week. And he spoke there. And then I said, do you want to be on my show? And he said, let's do it. And we're here. So I'm going to introduce Rob Ensor. Am I saying your name right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, wait. I want to show this. Rob, he healed through the John Sarno. We used to say like another saved by Sarno, but
Absolutely,
basically saved by Rob, saved by God, saved by your body and your inner intelligence. And so Rob has healed himself from a number of autoimmune symptoms and diseases. He is an author of a few books and an author of a book. He's writing about his story called The Mind
Solution.
The Mind Solution, which will be out in a few weeks on Amazon.
Late July, August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing. And he has a couple other books that he wrote that I posted. He is just about ready to become a coach, and he's going to be an excellent one. So, Rob, I like to hear from hello. Okay, you were born, you grew up. Were you sick? Talk a little bit about your timeline. Were you sick as a young boy? Talk a little bit about how things happened.
Well, yeah, if I was to go through everything, it would take 4 hours, but I can give you a condensed version.
Okay, please do.
With minor food intolerances and
talk a tiny bit louder, a little bit louder. Come a little closer and talk.
It started with minor food intolerances and back pain when I was from 8 through adolescence, but things didn't get really bad until February 2019, when I just finished writing a novel and my back hurt terribly getting out of a chair, and the pain persisted for weeks. So I went to see an osteopath, and she thought I had ankylosing spondylitis. So I Googled the symptoms, as you do, and pretty much agreed with her. And so with autoimmune disease, mainstream medicine says they're incurable and just want to manage your inevitable decline. And I didn't like the sound of that. So I kind of went down the most popular alternative approach, which is the autoimmune paleo diet or functional medicine approach, based on using diet to correct dysbiosis in the gut and heal the autoimmune disease. And the big thing about this approach is that they actually have there is hope for recovery. They have success stories. People do recover. They can fully reverse the symptoms with this approach, albeit they do still have to maintain a diet in most cases. So I chose the diet approach. I got some relief initially with this approach. Like I dropped lactose and I got an improvement.
Wow.
I dropped gluten and I got more of an improvement, and
wow.
I dropped starch and I got more of an improvement. But in the long run, it led to an unhealthy obsession with food. So So can I just read out the full symptom list? Is that all right?
Yeah, just go ahead. So wait a minute. So, but after the food worked a little bit, what other symptoms were going on?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to write this down because there's too many to remember.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple of the top ones.
Severe chronic back and hip pain, chest pain accompanied by shortness of breath, anxiety, depression, gingivitis, insomnia, frequent urination, wisdom tooth related infections, gluten, lactose, starch, eggs, soy, onion, nightshade, artificial sweetener, and citrus intolerance, IBS type, diarrhea, constipation, headaches, severe chronic fatigue, cold intolerance, which my doctor thought might be some kind of thyroid dysfunction. Yeah, autoimmune disease, probably. Massive foot swelling, urinary pain, dizziness, carpal tunnel, wrist and hand pains, hemorrhoids, and an anal fissure.
Wow.
Round it all off.
Wow. So go ahead. You started the diet. You had some relief, but then you became obsessed with. Go ahead. So then what happened?
Well, I started seeing doctors eventually, and 5 doctors provisionally diagnosed me with autoimmune disease. So celiac, Crohn's, and ankylosing spondylitis were mentioned.
Wow.
And one doctor told me I was the worst autoimmune patient he had ever seen.
I cannot. It's like I can't even believe somebody would say that.
Yeah. So all this kind of negative talk, I got a nocebo response from it. So
Good
it kind of
point.
became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, every time I went to see somebody who talked about my condition negatively, it kind of, I definitely got a nocebo out of it. And I did blood tests and stool tests, and my GP talked about all sorts of things. He talked about Gilbert's syndrome, which is a benign liver condition. It wouldn't explain any of my symptoms, really. That was pointless. He wanted to do a gluten test, which would have been pointless because at that time, if I ate gluten, I would have been hospitalized.
Oh, my
So,
God.
I mean, whether I actually had the allergy or not, it was kind of irrelevant. I just couldn't eat it. While I believed in the whole diet paradigm. So anyway, I had an ultrasound that didn't show anything, and eventually I got referred to a gastroenterologist. He wanted to do a gastroscopy and an X-ray, both of which were cancelled due to lockdown. So at that point, it was really sink or swim. I was kind of left on my own. But I was glad about that because, like I said, every time I saw a doctor, I got worse, and I wanted to do it on my own at that point.
Wow.
So yeah, it got to the point where with this diet where I could only eat 1,000 calories a day for 4 months of almond milk, mushrooms, and cucumbers because I reacted with terrible back, hip pain, and digestive symptoms to all other foods. And yeah, I needed a wheelchair to go further than 200 feet.
So when you were in a wheelchair because
of the back and hip pain.
You just couldn't walk. Wow.
Yeah, it was too painful, and I would feel like there was the pain, and then I'd feel like there was going to be a risk of a terrible disabling spasm, which happened on a few occasions.
Wow.
There's just the worst pain I've had in my life.
Were you wheeling the wheelchair? Could you wheel the wheelchair, or somebody was pushing?
No, my mom had to push me, but I could have wheeled it. Yeah, my arm still worked, but I mean, I had neck pain, shoulder pain, so even they didn't work particularly well. Yeah. So anyway, the real turning point was where I was so desperate that I basically promised Christ that I would spread whatever message he wanted me to spread if I recovered. So, and that worked. So, yeah, the next thing I got a kind of random recommendation from Amazon, John Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain.
But let's just I want to put this in perspective because, I've met an incredible gentleman who healed himself from multiple sclerosis, taking on, Jesus and religion and the faith. And I'm all about this relationship that you began to have with yourself, a higher divine source.
Yeah.
So kind of not surrendering, but this enormous, how I say it is enormous compassion and love and trust. So go ahead. So talk about that a little bit. And then you go ahead and someone turns you on to John Sarno around the same time that you pledged to God.
About a month later, I think. But anyway, yeah, the whole thing about the common denominator in virtually all healing stories is belief. I mean, whether it's a placebo cure or a pill or a surgery or TMS healing or faith healing, the common denominator across all of them is belief. Belief is absolutely crucial. And as soon as I decided that I was going to get better, mainly because I was so desperate, and desperation really turned me to Christ and God, and yeah, it worked. So,
but it's interesting. I wouldn't use that word. I would use the word of, Rose would call it your will.
yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah,
And what you did is you implemented the law of attraction, which is very scientific and very chemical.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of attracted, in a way, John Sarno's work because that was a fairly random recommendation from Amazon. Because I was
it was just on your feed.
Yeah. It's a good algorithm. But yeah. So I bought the book, but I didn't do anything with it for about 2 months. And what really convinced me to actually read it, I didn't do anything with it because, Sarno was talking about back pain, and I figured, well, I've got autoimmune disease, severe autoimmune disease. Um, I didn't think maybe it's not relevant. And then the other thing was that I couldn't accept that it was all psychological in origin, all these terrible symptoms that were very physical. So anyway, the thing that really convinced me to read Sarno was a dream that I had where I was on a podcast holding up Sarno's book and saying, diet's okay, but this stuff is better. So yeah, I mean, I kind of thought, well,
here you are.
Yeah, it's happening. I kind of thought, well, I've been asking for a solution, and the dream is kind of giving me one, so I should at least try it. And I figured there's nothing to lose by reading a book. There's not going to be any side effects like I get sometimes from trying herbs and supplements and what have you. So yeah, I started reading, and the core concept of Sarno was that pain and fear distract from repressed emotions. And if you acknowledge the emotion and the purpose of the pain is then defeated and the pain diminishes. And that was definitely my experience because, one day I just started, after having read Sarno, I started thinking about repressed anger and some stuff from my past. And I got about a 20% improvement in symptoms right then and there in about 10 minutes. So
do you mind sharing, like you tapped into some deep emotion?
Yeah, the main cause of my illness was grief because my father died of motor neuron disease, and there is a tremendous amount of grief because of that, which has been repressed.
Can I ask how old were you when he passed?
I was 20, but it went on for 3 years, so I think I was about 16, 17 when it died. So yeah, that was the main cause.
So do you think you had repressed grief or anger that he died? Like
grief. There was anger at a few other things. But yeah, the main cause really was grief because of that loss. And so then I went for a 3.5 mile walk and with my mum and talked about repressed emotions, repressed grief, repressed anger.
So you got out of the wheelchair after you read.
Oh yeah. The wheelchair was kind of a one-time event. Because I didn't need to walk more than 200 feet very often. I could hobble around my house, just about get upstairs without a stair lift. So That was a one-time event. I really spent about 10 months without ever leaving the house. Because I didn't want to use a wheelchair, and yeah, then there was the whole COVID lockdown as well. So yeah, I went on this 3.5 mile walk and talked about repressed emotions with my mum, and I walked further and faster and more uphill than I had before, and at that point I just knew it worked.
Wow.
For me. And so I got some gradual improvements, and I did it very slowly because I didn't want to be too ambitious and get a setback and then be discouraged. So I was very slow and sneaky, and I didn't announce beforehand when I was going to do some new activity like eat a new food or walk 5 miles instead of 3 miles or bend over. I just kind of did it spontaneously and ambushed myself, and that worked better than when I was talking about it in advance.
Right, like some people like they're trying to visualize, and this works, but then there's a setup, an expectation. So you're saying you just went ahead and just explain what you did.
Well, I really ambushed myself, because I believe there is a kind of, I'm into Jung, so I believe there is an archetype, which I call the deceiver, which is the kind of voice in your head that makes you afraid of pain, and then you get more pain, and also generates pain and other symptoms as distractions from the unconscious. And I kind of personify this as an archetype because I think it's more helpful to think about it that way. And I would just try and catch the deceiver archetype off guard by not talking about things in advance and impulsively just doing it.
Wow.
And it worked better. It really did.
Wow.
There's this whole thing about not letting the left hand know what the right hand's doing. Going back to the Bible, and there's a bit of a superstition in England about if you talk about something, you kind of jinx it, which is actually confirmed by experience. I mean,
right. Or you mean like if I worry about something, it's going to happen?
Kind of. Yeah, and it's just because the unconscious seems to be at least my unconscious seems to be such a contrarian kind of figure that, it opposes the conscious mind very often. And so whatever you want, the unconscious generally wants the opposite because it's everything that's not in your conscious thinking mind. So to a certain extent, we're all kind of at war with ourselves. The conscious mind is pulling in one direction, the unconscious is going in another direction.
Okay.
And
I want to stop there for a minute.
yeah.
So there is a conflict, because it's not a conflict. There is a brain, a conscious mind that's trained biologically, and what's the word? It's the word is, man, I'm coming back. I'm just a little blacked out here. Okay. You with me?
Yeah.
So the brain is protecting. That's its job. And the unconscious is like, so it's kind of in conflict, but doesn't have to be a conflict. This is what I want to say. The brain is going to be in sympathetic nervous system, which is just where it's set up for. Like you wake up in the morning, you're in sympathetic nervous system. You're like ready to, and then you got to kind of bring in the parasympathetic nervous system to calm. And how I see it is to make a relationship, kind of have a relationship with your thoughts, your beliefs, your actions. I mean, I'd like you to explain it in your way, and how to come out where.
Yeah, there's more than one way of looking at it, but really, the unconscious is everything that's not in your conscious mind, everything that you're not consciously aware of. So, in a sense, if you consciously want to do something, like, let's say, eat a new food or something, the unconscious is generally going to want the opposite. I mean, because it's the opposite of consciousness. It's everything that consciousness isn't. It's everything that's pushed out of consciousness.
Wow. Okay.
It's literally just, it's kind of a negative definition, because it's just everything that is not in your conscious thinking mind.
Well, 95% of the thoughts is in your unconscious mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's your solution to that fact? That
you have to increase your knowledge of, well, I mean, of course, some people with TMS, they just need to be kind of told it's fine, there's nothing to worry about, you know, there's no real deep damage, and then they're fine. But for more severe or moderate cases like mine, I think it's necessary with this approach to really go deep into the unconscious emotions, because then you don't need to be distracted from these unconscious emotions, these threatening feelings, because you voluntarily expose yourself to them. The purpose of the distraction strategy is defeated. You know, it's like catching someone in a lie. What's the point continuing with it if nobody believes in it? That to me.
So you're saying, so if I'm living and speaking and having a verbal, healthy relationship with my feelings of fear or grief or worry, is that how you would explain it? Like, so it's knowing what you're feeling, it's verbalizing what I'm feeling, it's
writing about it, journaling, talking about it, being aware of it. Then it's no longer unconscious, and you no longer need to be distracted from it with pain and other symptoms and fear.
Okay, so a client of mine will be like, yeah, I know I'm scared. I know I'm full of fear. I know I don't like my body. I know I'm disappointed. And then, but that's not enough for some people to know.
To know that they're...
To know what they're feeling. To know, okay, I feel fear. But it's not helping them because there's some other block going on.
Yeah, well, I do think ultimately the decisive factor for me was belief, really. But it did help, you know, and I think in those kind of cases where it's really intractable, I would try and work on the motivational factors and to try and increase the belief. But in
belief that
you can heal.
You can heal.
Belief that you're going to get better.
Like there was no, like you weren't negotiating with, you had no doubt.
Yeah, I had no doubt after I got the initial results on that 3.5-mile walk. After that, I was convinced, but I had to be cautious and build up gradually, you know. And I did have some setbacks. The most notable of which was I got this massive foot swelling, which was absolutely huge. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it. It was about 50% larger than my foot normally was, and then
for no reason.
Well, because I'd started with the whole Sarno thing, and I was beginning to become aware of my unconscious emotions, and it was what you call an extinction burst.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, he's no longer distracted by the back pain and the stomach problem. So I guess my deceiver archetype just wanted to try a different distraction because the old one wasn't working.
Well, what feeling were you repressing?
Well, I had yet to really get into a lot of the stuff in my past. I'd just kind of begun to skim the surface, and I hadn't begun journaling yet at that point. And it was journaling that got rid of the massive foot swelling. So in one journaling session, inside 10 minutes, this giant swollen foot went down to almost normal size.
I can't believe it. That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It's like sticking a pin in a whoopee cushion. Because I was very, very blunt and kind of forthright about my feelings, and it worked. I mean,
wow. Now, what about if, like, again, there are people who have such a interesting, like their brain can't be tricked, like their brain's not interested to listen. The conscious mind's not connecting to the unconscious. They'll be like, Doc, I know I'm full of fear. I get it. But my swelling isn't going down. Like it's something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I tend to see fear as mostly being a distraction, like pain is a distraction. Because, you know, fear tends to create, if you're afraid of the pain, it tends to create the pain.
Right.
and exacerbate it.
Like it becomes
So,
a
so
new narrative, a new narrative. Well, yeah, I know I'm fearful. I know I
yeah,
hate my body. Like it
but
becomes a new
yeah, yeah.
narrative.
But with fear, I would tend to see that as distracting from something much deeper, like anger or grief.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that this is what Sarno talks about in some of his books. And it's very insightful, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I don't think fear in itself should really be focused on. In fact, obsessing about fear and obsessing and thinking about pain, in my experience anyway, just tended to
It's
make
still obsessing. It's obsessing.
yeah, it just exacerbated the symptoms for me. And
Wow.
I really saw them fear and pain as distractions from much deeper emotions like anger and grief.
Wow. So tell us more about the kind of the things that you did each day. Like you got up in the
Yeah.
day, and what did you do? Would you wake up in the morning and your first thought was,
Well, first of all, I would read through the journaling that I'd done the night before. So I,
wow,
I did about an hour of journaling a day.
wow,
Late at night, I would write 2 pages at least of journaling about pretty much the most traumatic events in my life in very blunt, ISTDP type terms, very blunt,
wow.
and using very dramatic language. And yeah, so I would do that, and then when I woke up in the morning, I'd read it back 3 or 4 times. So I spent an hour a day doing this, doing journaling and reading the journaling and all that kind of thing. And I just kind of kept doing it for about 15 months because I kept getting a benefit for that long. And then I would occasionally, maybe once a week, try and expand the range of what I could do. So I was always walking, but sometimes, I would try and walk an extra couple miles, go up a bigger hill, or
Would you have pain while you were walking that you had to do like pain reprocessing therapy? You kind of
occasionally I'd have pain while I was doing these kind of things. But like I said, if I really caught myself off guard, it tended to work better, and I had less pain when I did the new
what do
activity.
you mean by that? When you were like explain that again when you
But
caught yourself off
yeah,
guard?
like on a day when I was in a good mood, I slept well the night before, I was feeling fine, and I would just impulsively, walk an extra few miles or try new food like dairy or gluten.
You wouldn't be focused on the problem. You would just be sort of in the moment. You were being in the moment.
Yeah, I didn't plan it ahead of time. Yeah, and I would just focus on enjoying the food rather than worrying about, oh my God, am I going to get, terrible diarrhea, digestive symptoms, or back pain as a result of this? I just kind of batted aside those thoughts by focusing on enjoying the food. And I only developed the willpower to be able to do that through this work on the unconscious emotions. It got
And what do
easier.
you call that work? Journaling? Were you meditating? Were you praying? Like you say, this is like still, it's quite amazing. So talk a little bit more about some of the
I
tools that
Yeah,
helped you.
it was mostly journaling. I mean,
Wow.
really, I didn't do any
It's not
meditation.
easy. It's not easy for any of us.
No, but I mean, I was in such a terrible state that I would, the emotional pain of journaling was so much better than the physical pain that I was in. You
Wow.
know, it was an easy choice for me because the severity of the symptoms was absolutely tortuous.
Wow. 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 So what kind of exercise were you beginning to do? Just walking?
Walking, and then eventually I built up to being able to run and doing push-ups. But this was all very gradually. Like I'd start out with a 2 mile run, and then I'd do 4.5 with a bit more of a hill, until eventually now I do 8.5 miles.
How
But it's
long
all
did
very
it take
slow.
for you? How long did it take for you to come out of the symptoms and be kind of symptom free and more? Let me ask you this question. Forget that that question's not so important. I think the more important question is, what do you do now when you get a symptom?
Um, well, now when I get a symptom, because I've kind of exhaustively gone over all the past trauma, I tend to think that now when I get a symptom, it's trying to prevent me from doing something, with my career. It's trying to prevent me from actively doing something and pushing forward. So now, like with writing novels and what have you, so if I get a symptom now, I'll just do whatever I think the deceiver is trying to stop me from doing. So
The deceiver is your unconscious mind.
well, it's the archetype that kind of distracts you with all these worries and pains and symptoms. So, I just write like 3,000 words, 5,000 words. If I feel like, I'm tired and I don't feel like writing, I'll just push myself to do it. If I don't feel like running, I'll just push myself to run, 8.5 miles. And then by doing that, sometimes at the end of a run, I've actually got more energy than I had at the start. And when I'm finished having done, at the end of a work day, 3,000 words, the fatigue is gone because the whole, these symptoms, I see them as trying to basically stop me from doing things. So then if you do it, it just defeats the purpose and kind of goes away or changes tack,
So it's like we had actually a friend of mine on the show a few weeks ago who had one of these, after 30 years of pain, had one of these, like she listened to the book on audio tape and she just, her pain went away. And she said, I just knew it was my brain. I just knew, and I was driven and motivated, and my will was, I don't want to have pain. That was enough for her. Like, I don't want to be in pain, and I get that it's my brain. That's all I needed to do. So I didn't sit down for 30 years, and now I began to just sit. And the pain didn't scare me, and it went away. So that's one mindset. You have this interesting point of view.
It's really derived from Sarno. This whole idea of the deceiver, I think, is kind of a logical extension of Sarno's ideas of pain as a distraction from unconscious emotions. Yeah,
pain is a distraction, right?
I'm an old school Sarno kind of purist, really.
Well, like in the book The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle talks about a pain body. He talks about a pain body, that it's your pain body. That's the voice.
Yeah.
And you can't, you're going to hear that pain body and have this discussion with it. And I don't remember exactly what's in his book, but it's fascinating because so we can call it whatever we want. But
yeah,
some people call it their little child. And that they have this, but you did have to have a relationship with the distraction, right?
Yeah. Well, not really. I mean, I just kind of completely ignored it. There's more than one way of doing it, of course, but for me, I just completely ignored it. So, yeah, the way I see it, there's two main archetypes involved in TMS healing. There's the deceiver and the enlightener. So the deceiver distracts via pain, and the enlightener reveals truths and self-knowledge that dispel the pain. The insight into the unconscious.
Wow.
That gets rid of the pain. So my idea was to tune out of the deceiver frequency and tune into the enlightener frequency. And the more I listened to the enlightener, which told me about myself and about all these unconscious emotions, the easier it was to ignore the deceiver.
Wow.
So I really just kind of ignored the distraction, the pain, and dug deeper into the unconscious, which made it easier to ignore.
Wow. So it's almost as if you were exposing yourself to the reality, which is like the exposure therapy or somatic tracking. It's like you were like aware that there was, your body wasn't functioning, your body was in balance, there were symptoms, you were aware, you were accepting, you were acknowledging, you were recognizing, you understood that you were not in danger, there was no threat. I'm just kind of
I mean, once I began to recover, initially, of course, I hated my symptoms, which wasn't good, but it did have the added benefit of making me so desperate, like I was a bad patient, and really hating being ill and disabled made me so desperate for a solution that eventually I found one.
You see, that's where some people, they don't, Rose has said this, and it's kind of harsh, but she cares about people so much, and she'll say, so what's it doing for you? What's the pain? How's it serving you?
Mm.
And so you were like, I don't want to even have to have that kind of dysfunctional,
Yeah,
paradoxal relationship with my pain.
yeah, I was a bad patient. I just couldn't accept it.
So you didn't negotiate. There was no negotiation.
No.
There was no
That's yeah.
doubt in a way.
That's why I didn't go down the medications route, because the mainstream doctors were just telling me that this is incurable and we can manage it with symptoms, and I couldn't accept that. So I was looking for all these alternatives that at least held out hope for a more or less full recovery. But yeah, once I started with the Sarno work, the kind of relationship I had with my body and my pain was really just to ignore it and remain detached from it. I mean, I didn't freak out. I didn't hate it at that point and get really angry whenever I got a symptom. So I suppose in that sense, it was kind of, somewhat like this somatic tracking,
Right.
but I didn't really accept it, because
So Rob, what would you say? I'm going to interrupt you. What would you say to people? Because some people, they know it's TMS, they know it's neuroplastic.
Yeah.
They understand their deep emotions, but they're not getting any relief. It's like they're not getting that moment. They're not even getting that moment. Forget even the extinction bursts. They're not getting relief. And it's like, what would you do with that? How would you?
There are many things I would do with that, but the main one I would say is that because of repression, because we repress emotions so much, it's hard to know exactly what it is in the unconscious that is causing the symptoms. You see what I mean? So I developed a technique to get around that doesn't rely on intuition. That basically you go through a list of life events and select those that apply to you and journal about them systematically. And while you're journaling about each one, listen to your body, monitor your reactions. And if you get symptom relief, that's definitely something to double down on and explore more deeply. And if you don't get symptom relief, maybe move on to a different life event, a different stressor. So it doesn't rely on intuition. It kind of cuts the guesswork out because you're doing a trial and error approach, going systematically through everything on that list that is applicable to you, all the things that commonly stress people out.
Yeah, and again, there's always this big question, Rob.
Yeah.
About, okay, so should I focus on my symptoms or not? And this is where Alan Gordon's been asked this question, and I'm in a group of PRT practitioners, and we talk about this. So it's very important for the listeners to know that yes, and even Dr. Hanskin will say, we don't talk about symptoms. We don't focus on it. We talk about it with our therapists, but we stay with the so again, there's and what the answer is regarding talk about symptoms, focus on it, exposure therapy, somatic tracking, love my symptoms or ignore them.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, they all work, and which can be a little confusing. I think since Sarno's day, there's been a proliferation of different techniques in the field, which has its positives and drawbacks. And for me, for me, really, I did not focus on my symptoms. I focused on the unconscious whenever I got a symptom and tried my best to ignore the symptom.
Wow.
And that worked in an extremely severe case.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's my approach.
No, and that's
basically the other approach.
You knew yourself. See, this is what the answer was. Depending on your personality, you decide which technique. Again, if you know the ultimate, I want to be served. I want to serve myself. I want to do what's best for me. Yeah. And it may be, I need to focus on the symptoms because it's somehow helping me, or I need to ignore them. Like, I think people have to know themselves, and the pain teaches you about yourself. The pain is here to teach you. So use it to serve you. That's how I would.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do think that well, yeah, like I said, for me, ignoring it was definitely the way to go. And for me, the more I thought about the symptom, just the worse it got. It's like the more attention you give someone who's annoying you, they'll just annoy you even more and get even more irritating.
What about, we didn't talk about compassion. What about, I know ignoring worked for you, but I
Yeah.
think there was sort of a compassionate, a compassionate sense about yourself. Talk about that a little bit, because that's an important tool. And look, you brought God into the picture, so you were
Yeah.
partnering with God the whole time.
Yeah, compassion. Well, I would characterize the spiritual aspect as being more to do with faith than compassion. I mean, for me, compassion didn't heal me. It was really more anger than anything. Because it's socially acceptable and easy to feel compassion and love because it's socially acceptable. I mean, nobody's going to frown upon you for talking about love. What is less socially acceptable is being angry, and talking about ugly emotions like that. So in my experience, that tends to get repressed more than the compassion.
Yeah.
And I do think it's the unconscious emotions that cause these kind of conditions.
Wow. I mean, really, I that's just unbelievable. I'm always a little bit just blown away by the situation, and each time I'm on the show with someone who's healed themselves, it's just a little bit different because of who they are, and
Yeah.
I really see that, and it is a very personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I always say to people, it doesn't matter about the symptoms. It really matters about how do you want to relate to yourself, and how do you want to find your way out of this by the way through or the way out. And so, for you, and talk a little bit about your book, because you also, the two books that you wrote, which were about Darth Vader, the books that you wrote.
No, I've told you about two books.
Yeah.
There's
Do you have a copy of it? Do you have a copy? Yeah.
Yeah, there's this one, Ego's Odyssey, which is a psychological fantasy based on Greek myth and the ideas of Sarno and Carl Jung. It's basically a psychological journey very, very deep into the unconscious with a kind of setting in Greek myth. And I really actually think in many ways this book is more useful than my recovery memoir, The Mind Solution, which is the other book. It's a proof copy, so it's got this thing across the front.
Oh wow, amazing.
Yeah, and that's the story of my recovery. But in the final chapter, there's a lot in there about science.
Yeah.
My big bugbear is that I want more evidence, like there is for chronic pain and fibromyalgia. I want more evidence that the TMS approach works on autoimmunity. I want more research to be done. So I've done a kind of fairly thorough examination of layman's examination of the scientific literature on written emotional disclosure and autoimmunity, psychotherapy and autoimmunity. And there's some interesting things that have come up. So we know that stress causes inflammation. And that adverse childhood events are higher in autoimmune patients than in normal controls. And we also know meditation is effective at reducing symptoms. And I did find one study that Sarno cites, which is by Smythe et al. In 1999, that he's got his rheumatoid arthritis patients basically journaling, writing about the most stressful event in their lives, the most stressful event. And he found a 28% reduction in overall disease activity as a result of that.
Wow.
So that was a very significant finding, which hasn't really been replicated. But I think that could be due to methodological issues, because in these emotional disclosure studies, they have typically 4 sessions that are 15 to 30 minutes of writing about stress. Now that's fine, but I mean, I did over 400 sessions over the course of 15 months, and also this, so I would recommend in future studies to do just a much more written emotional disclosure, four
Well, I
sessions.
think if you have you delved into, I mean, David Hanscom has enormous research and resources about journaling, and
Yeah.
he's had on his show a few times, his podcast, this scientist or this journalist, Dr. Pennybaker, I think is his name, who talks about
I've heard of Pennybaker.
even if I wrote like I am frustrated, I'm angry, it's still helping my brain. It's still taking the thoughts from the head to the paper, and it's changing your neurons and affecting your chemicals. And then of course, so there's and Hanscom, and again, we've all seen people heal from autoimmune, even without journaling. But there is like the people that I met that healed cancer and MS. I'm not sure they even journaled, but they took a kind of responsibility, and part of it was like what you did, like enough, like I'm not. It's like across the board, there was this level of, I was talking to someone today about this level of, like I said, there was like no negotiation. There was their belief was untouched.
Yeah.
So that's chemical. That's chemical.
Yeah. Total faith.
But then you need the mindfulness. Then you need to take the thoughts, then you need to understand if you're living up here and not in your heart, which Rose taught me so much about, like that's this path from your head to your heart, that's this knowledge of your unconscious thoughts. So you're aware. So we're the mindfulness. We're now mindful. We're aware. We're recognizing, like Dr. Clark will say, I'm a butterfly on the wall of my childhood, and I'm having enormous compassion and love that little boy that had to give up his authenticity to get any love. So we're back to sort of scaffolding away, whatever door you want to go through to get to your authentic self.
Yeah.
And in the pain reprocessing, they'll talk about how the barriers, the trauma is a barrier to my brain calming down. My brain is living in fight or flight, and it's in a habit that I'm having trouble breaking that habit. And how do we break the habit? We accept it. We accept we accept my situation. We don't fight it. We don't have conflict. And then the brain calms down. So now I'm sort of talking neuroplastic a bit.
Yeah.
And I took the topic away a little bit. So, but help me here. Where would you come in with the brain and the habit, and how you were able to shift that habit from probably like age 9?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a gradual reconditioning process. There was a lot of it was rereading all the TMS, but almost all the TMS books, just to kind of get clear out all the medical misinformation I'd picked up over the years. And then gradually, going a bit deeper into the unconscious, and gradually expanding the range of what I could do, the foods I could eat. And it was a very gradual process of reconditioning. The accepting symptoms approach, yeah, I mean, it does work. It's kind of better than freaking out about it and being like, oh my God, I've got terrible back pain. This is terrible. This is the end of the world. Because that reinforces the pain response.
Right. Like I didn't hear the word fear from you, because most people just are living in the fear. They're just so.
Yeah, I was afraid.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, I see the fear as just a distraction. So whenever I get afraid, I just kind of ignore it. It's like,
right. So you really trusted that your body got sick and that your body got better. You trusted.
Yeah, it started out as belief, but eventually, as I kind of went deeper into the philosophy of it, which Jung helped with, it became knowledge. I just understood this is the way the world works, and that was easier than trying to believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, you were lucky. You were lucky to get a break. You were lucky. And I know there are people out there listening who are not getting a break, but it doesn't. What do you suggest? Like my feeling
Yeah.
is don't stop believing, because
Yeah.
you're not a medical failure. It's a great diagnosis to have neuroplastic pain or to have
Yeah.
autoimmune. If your
Yeah.
body attacked itself, your body can heal. If your body learned anxiety or pain, your body can unlearn it.
Yeah, what I would say for people who are really struggling to make progress or make a full recovery is that, as you touched upon, the real common denominator across all these healing stories is total faith, total belief. And so then it's like, okay, but how do you get the belief? And for me, finding a real deep purpose in life, which is to spread the word about psychosomatic illness and mind-body phenomena, finding a real deep purpose in life that was exciting and motivated me, gave me the motivation, and that made it easier for me to believe that I would heal, so that I could then do this task, which unconsciously, when I was ill, I obviously wanted to do. So I kind of aligned my conscious mind more with the deep unconscious desire to do this kind of work, and that's what the psychologist Larry LeShan found in his work with cancer patients. So he had quite amazing results with terminal cancer patients, people with severe cancer. And basically, he found the most effective psychotherapy for these patients was to get them to discover what they really wanted to do with their lives.
Wow.
And very often, that was not what they were doing when they got ill. It involved quite a total upheaval of their life. Like quitting a very lucrative job and then going off to do something that doesn't pay very well, but that was their passion. And
Powerful.
he found that was very powerful, even for something like cancer. So I've got a saying in the book: sometimes illness is a cul-de-sac, and the only way out of a cul-de-sac is a U-turn.
I love it.
So a complete change of direction can sometimes be necessary, and sometimes it's not necessary to go through all the trauma. It's just a complete change of direction, and the illness is a kind of signal from the unconscious that something's awry, you're doing something wrong, or at least you're doing something that's at odds with what the unconscious wants, the real deep desire.
Yeah. Rob, I really liked what you just said. I mean, there's a bunch of people listening. If anybody wants to ask any questions, we're going to say goodbye in a few minutes, but there are some people listening, and I'm a member of a bunch of Ankylosing Spondylitis pages, and I can't wait to go back and post this. We didn't spend the hour talking about Ankylosing Spondylitis, but you were diagnosed with it, and your spine began to harden and lose your joints, and yet.
Yeah, I was provisionally diagnosed with it. I never, because of the lockdown, I never got an actual official lockdown diagnosis, which actually helped, because if it's a diagnosis of something that's incurable, widely regarded as incurable, even though you have these cases where people do manage to heal. That for me at least gave me a nocebo response. So I would have had even more of a nocebo to overcome if I had an actual official diagnosis from a specialist.
Yeah.
So I believe it helped me not getting diagnosed in my particular case.
It's like I find myself a couple times a week fighting with some people on Facebook about pelvic pain or CRPS or and especially when they're like, yeah, I did that mind body work, it didn't work. And I'm like, this is it. This is the bottom line. This is the bottom line. This will work. It can work. It is working. Go.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so, because they'll see it like something like check, and they're on there talking about symptoms. Now they're giving each other hope and relief, but it's at a level that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, talking about symptoms didn't get me anywhere. Talking about the kind of the thing the symptoms are trying to distract me from is what really healed me. The stuff nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
Unconscious emotions,
Yeah.
traumas, terrible grief, anger, all
Yeah.
the socially undesirable stuff that's not polite dinner conversation.
Yeah.
Everything that everyone doesn't want to talk about is kind of, for me anyway, was the way to heal.
Well, and we grow up in a society
But
where
it's
boys don't cry and girls act a certain way. And so you are figuring that out, in honor of your parents and my parents. We sometimes we get these messages, but in honor of your father, who really, raised a smart boy. I mean, you're breaking through some of those patterns. And I just want to mention that you're I just want to mention about the book again. So it's called can you hold it up? The Rough Draft.
The Mind Solution.
Yeah.
And basically I'm waiting for Rebecca Tolan's contribution, because she had
Chronic
Hashimoto's
fatigue. She had chronic fatigue.
and chronic fatigue, yeah. And she's going to be like a success story in that.
Amazing. I want to just we have a question from Sharon. Thank you. I'm Sharon. I'm so happy to see you here. So thanks for sharing. I think I actually got the answer I needed, but would like to hear more about releasing subconscious anger. Often when journaling about that, I just get wound up and caught in it.
If it's really, really deep anger about something very big and worthy of anger, I would say it can be, to a certain extent, a good thing to get caught up in it. And to just, because like I kept exploring these things and kept repeating them for 15 months, and I kept getting results from it. So it can be a good thing to get caught up in it, but you can't really, it's not a good idea to take it into your life and start yelling at people. And especially, I think a lot of minor irritability about minor things is just a distraction.
Yeah.
It has to be real deep anger about something really big.
Yeah. And, I just saw something from Gabriel Maté about our traumas are, they're memories that we can choose to respond to or react. We're obviously reacting. The disease is a reaction to many traumas. So, and the reaction just keeps the cycle going. But if we could have, what I would say, Sharon, is to have, what do you think, Rob? To have a relationship with that journaling, a relationship with that anger, that somehow you're aware that you're caught, but you're looking at you're putting into perspective. You're not your anger. This is my anger. This is my little child. This is my relationship. It's almost like, help me here, Rob, because I know somebody who journals and wants to kill herself after she journals. So we got to kind of put it into perspective, and as how can it serve you? How can your journaling serve you? Because your body is not here to punish you. It's here to protect you. So the trauma, also, you survived the trauma. You survived like amazingly strong individuals. So how do we put that into perspective, Robert, to help people?
Yeah, I mean, I think once you've really thoroughly plumbed the depths of an emotion like anger, at a certain point, you've just got to let it go. And forgiveness can help with that. I mean, And that is a good way to finally bring it to an end. But I do think you can get a lot of mileage out of these unconscious emotions, and
Very good.
really
Very
squeeze
good.
the
Very
last
good.
drop before you
And we're not even here to
before you
even
finally let it go.
yeah. But letting go could also be you're not kicking it away. You're accepting it. You're holding a vessel for it. Some people would say you're integrating it.
Yeah.
You're integrating your past into your present to serve you again, to serve you.
Yeah, and the idea is that, especially if you are getting improvement from doing this journaling, that you're kind of being rewarded with physical relief of symptoms.
Hopefully.
That's
And
what.
if not, again, and I don't want people to think, again, the result oriented doesn't work for all of us. We all want results, but if we're attached or holding on to that result,
Yeah.
as opposed to the journey, well, I will get better. It's neuroplastic. I deserve to be better. I have a faith and I will get better. In fact, I am better. I just have a normal sensation. I can live with autoimmune symptoms. Like it's an attitude. It's like Joe Dispenza will be like a vibration. You're vibrating at a higher frequency that this symptom is not hurting you. It's another door in. And I want to just mention, Sarah's comment, thank you, talking about the things no one wants to talk about. Yeah, this is the horse manure. This is the pot of shit.
Yeah.
This is and we're all in it. I mean, we're all involved in it, and no one's immune here.
Yeah.
And that's why, Rob, for you to come on and talk about it, and then, want to help people. And that was your motivation. That was your will. You placed the value and said, God, if I can get better, I'm going to help people. And not only did God reward you, but you chemically, you changed your chemicals, which is what everyone can do. You can affect your hormones, your chemicals. You can change the way that your immune system functions, etc.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was about putting the more intangible spiritual aspects above kind of self-interest, and that definitely got a result.
Wow. So this is what I wanted to say. I lost my train of thought. So Rob is going to be a coach. You're getting certified, and Rob is going to be a coach. He's already an amazing coach. He's already giving us great insights and understanding and hope and belief. Rob has a Facebook page, and you can reach him in the Facebook page. I can give you his email if you contact me on my Facebook page. Show up the two books, the book you wrote already about I love your analogy. I think some people will really relate to this about
Ego's Odyssey, the fantasy book, which is, I mean, the temptation with a novel is to think, oh, it's not relevant. There are areas you can explore in a novel that you really can't in nonfiction,
So what was the distractor you called? Because I think Dr. Sarno would love this. And Michael, maybe I want to send a copy to Michael Galinsky. Talk about the deceiver.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a Jungian archetype. It's just a kind of psychological factor that, I mean, everyone experiences this. It doesn't have to be abstract. It's just the constant any worries or fears or even desires, or ambitions, anything that basically distracts you from the unconscious and the spirit within the unconscious kind of is the activity of the deceiver in my framework.
Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating analogy, and I'm gonna bring you back when Rose can be back in a few weeks. So I want to bring you back again. Maybe we'll talk about.
Yeah.
We'll talk about. Well, you had a dream about it. Now the dream came true. So, but I want to, because it's a fascinating way to understand our voice. Like in Judaism, we have this thing called our evil inclination. Our evil inclination, like the part of us that worries or what, and God gave us this evil inclination to build it's like Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen is the cracks in the darkness, like
I mean, you can pretty much see the deceiver and the enlightener as the little devil and the little angel on the shoulder. It's really is that simple. And I mean, that's one way of looking at it.
Robert, it's fascinating. I've been doing this for 3 years on the round table, and this is like the first time we're having this conversation. And I'm not like a Star Trek or Star Wars kind of person, but I'm definitely understanding Darth Vader. Like Darth Vader is this
Jungian, the Jungian,
and he's this loving father. Like, isn't that who he is? He was like the father and the
he's complicated. He's complicated. Yeah, he's the villain, but at the end of the day, he kind of sacrifices himself to save Luke.
Right. God.
Yeah. So he had a good side that was deeply repressed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And George Lucas was really inspired by, I think, Joseph Campbell, whose work was derived from Jung and the archetypes.
Exactly. Oh my God, this is so brilliant.
All the great stories really activate the archetypes. Something inside of the reader's psyche. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So you can project onto it, and you get more absorbed in it. And that's what I try to do with Ego's Odyssey.
Robert, it's brilliant. It's just brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. And I'm going to send I think that maybe you want to send a signed copy of your book to Michael Galinsky.
Oh, sure, yeah.
He's going to love this idea. And maybe sometime we'll have the three of us on the show talking about that'd be great. Deceiver and the enlightener. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of based on Sarno and Jung, but I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So we're gonna go because it's late for me, but you're from England, which I want everyone to know.
Yeah.
And I could really go on and talk, and there's some people out there. So if you have any more questions, Rob is available on his Facebook page, Rob Ensor, Ensor. You can also reach him through me, and everyone knows where I'm at. And Robert, thank you so much for contacting me. I am one blessed human being. I am one blessed person, and I'm just thanking God to put me in this place, to be this messenger, to meet people like you. And I'm so happy you contacted me.
Well, thanks for giving me the platform. It hasn't been easy to get one, but thanks for giving me the platform.
Well, you've been very helpful. This is your destiny. You're going to be, and there'll be other coaches who are going to contact you, because lots of coaches are doing some great things online. And just don't be shy. I know you have the shy part of you, so put yourself out there a little bit.
Oh yeah, I'm way out of my comfort zone doing this. Extreme radical introvert.
Are you having a rash or some hives or something?
No, a bit of tiredness is what I've got it down to nowadays. Just a bit tired is the only kind of psychosomatic resistance.
I'm so thrilled and honored to be out of your comfort zone with you. I go on every week and I'm out of my comfort zone, and people don't notice I'm anxious. I'm talking fast. I'm playing with my hair. I'm drinking. I'm always finding my anxiety up here. So let's meet again in a few weeks and be out of our comfort zone. Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. I mean, it's all about getting out of the comfort zone,
Wow. Amazing. Robert, have a wonderful night. We will be in touch soon. And please let us know as soon as the book comes out.
Yeah.
Okay. And very,
very kind of Rebecca to contribute to the book. I'm very, very appreciative of that.
No, it was great that you contacted her.
Late July, August.
Amazing. So we'll be in touch about that. And thanks again for coming up and being out of your comfort zone with me. All right, have a wonderful night, and God bless to everyone in the audience. And this will be on YouTube by the morning, and then I'll send you a copy.
Okay. Yeah.
Also. Okay. All the best.
Yeah. Bye.
Good evening. Okay, wait 1 second.